So hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo and Going Bold Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. Hello, my name is Tina Huggins, and this is my co-host, Joe Huggins. And today we're looking deep into the legal abuse with Danielle Duperret, who holds an ND and a PH, and a little bit about her. So I'm going to read this to you. Dr. Danielle was born and raised in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. She traveled extensively through Europe and Middle East and parts of Asia before moving to the United States in 1979. She says, despite a happy childhood, her marriage was far from ideal. She became trapped in a cult and struggled to make her marriage work for over 20 years, ultimately filing for divorce that lasted over 16 years due to the custody issues involved. During this time, she and her children often hid in different states. When her teenage children ran away from their abusive father, Danielle and her oldest daughter were arrested and falsely accused of kidnapping. Due to that, Danielle spent 6 months in maximum security for a crime she never committed. Upon her release, the late Dr. Karen Huffer, a forensic pathologist, reached out to her. Together, they work to empower people suffering from legal abuse in various situations through a weekly support group. Legal abuse is a significant issue that destroys many lives in the United States and has spread globally. And I want to welcome you very much to the show, Danielle. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me and being willing to talk about these touchy subjects.
Oh, yes. In fact, I just made contact with somebody who I want to get you in connection with, specifically about the topic, about you being on the show today. He's in Colorado, and he works to try and prevent this stuff. And so I was asking him if he would be willing to watch this show and then to help come on the show later and talk about this specific show. So I will get you in touch with him a little bit later. So your story is a little bit different than my stuff that I've got on. Joe and you share some information together. Joe's divorce without any custody issues lasted 7 years. His was the longest in the county. And not that he's proud of how long it went, but it was a very expensive deal. And I can tell you, Danielle, that my clients, all of them, every single one of them that have been or are in the process of being divorced from a narcissistic person, have all dealt with legal abuse. So I can join you in that part of the conversation. So I'll just turn it over to you, Danielle. Tell us about your situation.
My situation, I have recovered, so that's why I can help people. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD and anhedonia, which means my all my emotions flatlined after I got out of jail. I could look at a sunset, I could tell you the color, but I had no feelings. I could listen to music, and so yeah, it was just a bunch of notes. And even watching movies, I had absolutely no emotion. And a psychologist friend of mine told me, you've gone so far down, you're not going to come out of that one, and just learn to live like that. And I did not appreciate that at all, because it was not the way to live. And I already had some tools in my tool chest, and I kept learning new strategies. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm smelling flowers. I said, wow, my sense of smell came back. So I bought all kind of scented candles and essential oils. I would just, every flower I found, I would smell them, was great. And little by little, all my senses came back. And I think now I'm enjoying my senses much more than I did before. So there is hope. And what I do is help people, well, during the procedure to keep their heads above water to survive, and after that to thrive again.
That's awesome. So Joe's situation, he didn't quite end up in the same thing, but we ended up with a bunch of thumb drives. He thought maybe some financial information would be on there that he needed to turn into the courts. So we had me put them in and listen to or look through them while they were recordings from his ex-wife. There's, I don't know how many hours of recordings. And when I turned them on, he ducked down, and for the first time, I got to see what PTSD looked like in other people. I have experienced it, but mine was totally different than that. And it took him probably 2 hours to come out of that situation. So he could share that.
It's just like somebody pulled your life plug and you just dropped. So I can relate to the sensory overload and that kind of stuff. So that it's a real deal. Yeah. And you talk about smelling flowers. I smell flowers all the time. I slow down to smell them. And then I thank my mom because she always told me, slow down, smell the flowers.
Yeah.
He's passed, but I talk to her all the time. So if we keep that kind of stuff in mind to rehab ourselves, it's the little things in life, those little moments that we can appreciate. That helped me.
Yeah, and somebody told me PTSD never goes away. And in some way it's true. You never know what you're going to be triggered by. But once you have the strategies and the techniques to get rid of a trigger, then it doesn't come back. And it can take years between triggers. And I haven't had a trigger since, COVID. When I went to the store and I saw people in a line in front of the store, reminded me of the lines in jail, because going from jail to court, we were on an underground, we were shackled to each other, and you had lines of hundreds of people. So that kind of triggered it. And I went back home and, I used the EFT, emotional freedom techniques, to get rid of that. But that was kind of the last trigger I had. So it's been a few years.
Right.
And then one time I remember I was in a restaurant with my daughter. We sat down and it triggered a flashback. The chairs, the tables were the same way as it was in the lunchroom in the jail. So I asked my daughter, okay, can we just move to a different table? Took care of that. And, but when I got out of jail, I had nightmares. I constantly had flashbacks. So it's also a decision and a choice to make, say, okay, I'm not going to live like that. There are solutions.
Right.
Yeah. So kind of tell us about your ordeal and the actual abuse, the legal abuse that or the whole ordeal from the beginning to the end.
Well, I was pretty naive. My childhood heroes were Heidi and Pollyanna, and I saw life with rose-colored glasses. And even though my marriage was not happy, I was abused, I was raped, I was in a so-called Christian cult where I had to obey my husband until death. I still believed that we would have a happy divorce. I had friends who were divorced. They got houses side by side so the children could choose where to go. They they babysat each other's kids so the other could redo their life. I expected my divorce to be like that. And that was not at all the way it was. And I also expected the judge to protect my children. And the judge did not. So, in one instance, that was a few years into the divorce, my sister-in-law, whom I had hardly talked with, wrote a letter to the judge saying, don't give custody to the father. He raped me for 8 years while I was growing up. And 6 weeks later, the father had full custody and I had supervised visitation. I did not see my children for 2 years. And then they ran away twice. And the second time, my oldest daughter, who was 23 at a time, and myself were arrested. We had the U.S. Marshals surround our house. And yeah, we were arrested. She spent 4 days in jail. She had the choice of either staying in jail or paying her father's attorney fees. Now, the father was making a lot of money. She was not. So she had like 4 jobs. She would, when her car broke down, she would rollerblade to a job, sleep on a bench that was in Las Vegas, and go to the next job. And I spent 6 months in maximum security with murderers and drug dealers who protected me from the guards. The guards were the dangerous ones. And it was amazing. The inmates knew that I did not belong there. None of them had ever seen somebody or heard somebody who had not been in jail. They were all from families who just went to jail and to prison and just rotated in and out. And, you know, I thought maybe God put me there so I could help these girls. But they didn't want to get help. The help they wanted was from each other about how to not get caught again. So I kind of stayed in my corner. I was doing a lot of reading. And one day, one of the gang members came to me and said, "You realize you're the alpha female here? Everybody respects you." So when I learned that just being, it's maybe not doing, but just being who you are was important. I hope that in some way I could influence them just by being. But I could not digest any of the food. I had cancer. I was very careful what I ate. I ate organic. That was not the food in jail. Okay, they give us like 1,200 calories and it's all bread and whatever's on your plate, you don't really know about it. But I was getting so sick that I stopped eating. The only thing I would eat was oranges that they give us in the morning. And then I ordered sunflowers, which were mostly rancid. But the inmates realized I had problems and they would hide and give me their oranges. And when the guard would find out, had me put all the oranges in the trash, and they were punished for giving me an orange, and they were in lockdown for a couple of days. But they still continue to do it. And then some of the guards, I had, my heart went into fibrillation at the point, and the guards just dragged me across the room and threw me on a mat in my cell. And the inmates were gonna go to the the higher up in the jail to try to protect me and say, "Hey, this is not right."
Wow, wow, that's that's beyond legal abuse. That takes you into physical harm inside, where you would think that the guards are going to be the ones that protect you. Wow, that's just a horrible story.
So what country is that? Did that take place?
That was in Las Vegas. That's where I was arrested by the U.S. Marshal. I spent 4 months in Las Vegas, and then I was transferred to where the divorce had taken place in Tuolumne County. It's by Yosemite Park, on the west side of Yosemite Park.
Wow. You would think that'd be some third world country, in Brazil or something, the way you describe it, not in the United States.
Yeah, and the way the inmates are treated was horrible. There was 2 stories and then a big room, and one of the inmates was a black girl, had, big hair, and a guard wanted to take her down to the lower floor, and I guess she pushed the guard away, and the guard grabbed her by her hair, and there was hair all over, just dragged her down. And I've seen, inmates that were beaten. When that happened, we had to face the wall and kind of not look. It's horrible. It's a dehumanizing situation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, and you weren't supposed to be there in the first place. So obviously the courts didn't protect you and they didn't protect your children, and the abuse that the children were dealing with. So I'm assuming that your ex beat the kids. Is that the type of abuse, or did it run into
kids?
sexual?
And my kids with me were eating healthy food with a father. They had, I think, just spaghetti sauce, and beans.
Wow.
And And when I got out, I was able to, I was not allowed to see my children, but I would go and hide food wherever they were to, to kind of feed them. And then I learned that he was also a pedophile. So that got me, my heart went in fibrillation. I ended up in a hospital. And then my 17-year-old daughter told me, Mom, I bought a car with a big trunk just in case. I'm going to take the younger ones and we're going to go hide and I'll take care of them. And she did. She ran away with the 3 younger ones and went to hide in the mountains of Colorado. To this day, I don't know where she went because they learned that, they could be tracked with a phone. So she did not use a phone. She used a payphone, contacted somebody who contacted somebody else. We did a chain until it came to me that, Mom, we are safe, don't worry. But then their aunt got into it and talked to the DA, and they promised that the children, if they went to Florida to their aunt, they would be protected. The DA said that there's no way we're gonna have the father go there. When they arrived in Florida, the father was there and he got full custody.
Wow.
Yes, yes. And I have seen, in fact, Joe has a story. Why don't you go ahead and tell her about?
Sure. So I've always heard that the women normally get the kids unless some weird thing, then the guys could get them. So I was already brainwashed into that she would get the kids. And so her and I, and earlier in our marriage, we'd get in these arguments and they'd be yelling and that kind of stuff, so it got pretty bad because, she's a very unreasonable person. There was really never any peace in the house. So we've had these knockdown, drag out fights. And so one time I came home from work, the house was evacuated, no 6 kids, no wife. And I see a note and it says that I moved to South Dakota, which is a long ways from Colorado. And she enrolled the kids just like that into school. 2 of them were too young to be in school. We had 2 sets of twins. So 2 of them were too young to be in school yet. And then the other ones, I think, barely made it into kindergarten and then on up from there. So that scared the heck out of me. I was empty. My 6 kids meant everything to me. I revolved around them. They revolved around me, even though we were in an unhappy marriage. The kids were everything. So that just killed me inside to be without my kids. So I vowed at that time to do everything I could do to get by in the marriage. So I stopped the arguments. It could be one-sided, big deal. I'm still there in the house. She brought the kids back after a while. Very emotional time for me. And so she brought them back. I vowed to, inside, I vowed to not argue, get along, that kind of stuff. So, and that's how I went on for years and years and years until the youngest ones now were 17, and then the other ones were out of the nest. So we made it that far. The kids are actually pretty darn healthy. They saw a lot in their time. They matured in a lot of ways. They evolved. They understand more than most protected kids that never see anything. And I wouldn't advise to educate your kids that way, but it happened. So anyways, and the cops were called on me 3 different times at the latter part of it. And the cops would say, Joe, we can't kick you out of your house, but we really urge that you get out of here. This, and they always came in 2s. One would be the bad cop, one would be the good cop. And it was always the good cop that would confide in me. the bad cop would get in my face, try to anger me and that kind of stuff. And, you know, they just couldn't anger me. I wasn't going to go down that road. But anyways, that's the way I went because of fear of losing my kids and not trusting the legal system. Because I figured I'd lose the kids no matter what. She'd turn the kids against me. They would hate me. I wasn't going to go down that road. So I stuffed it and survived. And now we're in Arkansas and we're thriving. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So one of the things that you talked about how you ended up there, but you had a judge and as you well know, Danielle, that these judges sit in a narcissistic chair already. And if they tend to be narcissistic thinkers, and things can just be totally against you. They don't like you because you're wearing a color they hate, or they don't like your attorney.
They didn't like my accent.
Right. Your accent, definitely. So he had a judge that told him, go ahead and tell her what your judge told you.
This was after the legal proceedings started with the divorce. And this was our first judge. We had, who knows, 4 or 5 judges because it takes so long. So he's in this introductory part of his narcissistic seat, and he's describing how things are going to be going. And he's like, I just want to be straight with you guys. I don't care if you lose everything. He goes, I don't care. He goes, it's all nuts and bolts to me. And I'm thinking, wow. And then he goes, and then after I have my judgment, you can appeal and then drag it on even more if you want. And I'm thinking, I want out of this thing. I want a judgment. Let's get on with it. And he's kind of laying out the platform for someone that wants to drag their feet. Oh, now I can appeal. So yeah, I guess it's okay to slow things down. And slow things down she did. I mean, every excuse in the world. She had fictitious COVID. Was it once or twice?
I don't know, at least once.
You know, we tried to mediate with her because it was, court told to us to mediate. She wouldn't come up with any mediators, so we came up with 3 mediators and said, please pick. She never picked, and we said, okay, if you don't pick by the state, we'll pick one for you. And so we had to pick one because she just went dark, wouldn't even say anything. So with all that in mind, we never mediated. So
yeah,
they just prolonged.
All of my clients, like, I think a percentage, about 99% of all of them that I've worked with, they can't mediate out because of the way things start and the way things work through. So in his judge's case, that judge told his ex, one narcissistic thinker to another, how to prolong the whole thing and what to do and how, and she did everything. Check, the whole thing. We ended up, when they went through court, this is something I wasn't proud of, but it was something that worked. We got her to put me on the stand and to ask me question after question after question. Well, what the intention was is to prove to the judge that she wasn't after what she said she was after. She wanted to attack me, him, and we were able to prove that. I was on the stand and she caught me in something that the judge got mad at me about. And the funny thing was, it was a cousin they were asking about, and she had recently got married and they couldn't remember her last name because it had changed, right? So anyways, as you well know, having to go to court and getting in there, you're at the mercy of that judge who doesn't like your accent.
Yeah, I was told when I started the divorce by neighbors that you're going to lose everything. You're a woman, you have 2 doctorates, and you have an accent. And I laughed and I said, this is the 20th century. It was 1998 at the time. It doesn't happen anymore. Well, I was wrong. I lost everything. And the cops were called several times and they knew about the situation. To me, we'd love to protect you, but the judge is God in this county, and I have a wife and 2 children. There is nothing I can do to help you.
Yeah, yeah. And because I get to see my client's attorney, and a lot of cases I'm working side by side with that attorney, I get to see that attorney, and most of them are actually really good attorneys. Some of the clients don't know how to communicate with them until I come on board, but I get to see a lot of times the narcissists, the person they're divorcing's attorney through everything that's going on, reading the proceedings and whatnot. And there's a lot of those that are right there for the money. They're doing, like I have one we were talking about earlier, that they've just kind of given up. And I remember reading through all the proceedings with his before I come on board as an assistant to his attorney in investigating the paper, that she had an attorney that you could tell they just give up. They just start throwing shit into the courts. They don't put things together right. They don't investigate. And I'm seeing that now with one of my clients. They're just throwing shit into the court, and they're not even caring. They're having the secretary, who's not a legal secretary, do most of it now.
Oh, yeah, the secretary was always to blame. Oh, she didn't tell you we had a session today? Yeah.
Always, always.
So, yeah, you know, and you're saying, yeah, it used to be that the women got the custody of the children, but it has changed now because guys got together. Guys usually have more money, and they studied the father's rights. And the mother, if there is abuse, the mother usually loses. And there's so much money in giving the children to the abuser, because a protective parent, whether it's male or female, will go back and try to protect the children. And that, you know, engenders a lot of money for the, what do they call it? The cottage industry around family courts, where therapists get money, attorneys get money. I was given, when I was in jail in California, I was given public pretender, public defender. And yeah, he told me I was a vicious woman who did not want to obey her husband.
Oh my gosh. I am so
And
sorry.
I had like 40 witnesses, medical doctors, psychologists who knew me, who knew my children. They were not allowed to testify. I was told the only one who was allowed to testify was a U.S. Marshal. He just had to say that my children were in Las Vegas and I would go for 7 years in prison. And they just turned things around so I would accept to do a plea bargain. Being from Switzerland, I had no clue what a plea bargain was. And my consulate just told me, you know, accept it and we'll deal with it. And yeah, so the plea bargain, I was not allowed to appeal, although there was an instance where I did appeal, and I was in Fresno at the Court of Appeal, and in the afternoon, I was back in Sonora. And the judge in Sonora, Superior Court, asked me, who were the judges in the Court of Appeal? And I told him 3 names. Say, oh yeah, I went to school with 2 of them. So, you know, I knew I was not. And also they had, I couldn't afford to have somebody transcribing everything. They had it done on audio, and there was technical difficulties. So they lost the audio. So I couldn't give it to the Court of Appeal. So the case was just thrown out.
That is, yeah, I've seen so much of that. Yours has everything, and I just get to see pieces of this and that in each different trial that my clients go through. So, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. So you ended up working with Karen, Dr. Karen, and you put a program together where you help the clients that have been through all this. So kind of explain a little bit more about that.
Well, we got together when I got out of jail. I don't remember who put us in contact. She wanted to know about me, and then we started to talk. We're both kind of therapists. But it's, you know, legal abuse is not just family court. We had a once a week meeting with people who had gone through HOA abuse, who had lost their jobs unlawfully, lots of elder abuse, probate court, And basically we did some therapeutic intervention during the week so people could live another week and another week. And Karen had her, I think, 8-step, and I was doing my 5-step and just working with people.
Yeah. And then, wow. Yeah. Anytime that you end up in a courtroom, and I talk about family court because you don't have jurors. So jurors can convict you based on what they hear and see inside the courtroom. But when you only have a judge, that's one person, and he can wake up on the bad side of the day. And like you said, he didn't like your voice. He didn't like the fact that you held 2 doctorates. So they throw the book at you because they don't like what you represent. That's just wrong how our kangaroo court system seems to work.
You know, I had an attorney for a while charged me $1,500 to change from where was I? Mariposa County to Tuolumne County. $1,500 to do a change of venue. And, you know, somebody paid for that, but he told me, you know, I'm not going to take any more of your money. The judge doesn't like you. You're going to lose.
Wow. And that's just wrong. And I see that often, you know, when it comes to that. My son who ended up on a ticket, he ended up in front of a judge who didn't like the way his attorney was dressed. And so he got convicted just right there, just because he got mad at the way the attorney was dressed.
Yeah, I mean, they are a human being, they are biased, but when it comes to the life of children, I think we should have more rigorous checkup on these judges. One of the judges said, you know, this is my courtroom. And well, no, it's not really. And then I ended up, I did Karen's program. I became an ADA advocate, and I went on a couple of cases, one in Colorado with a woman who was put in jail for 1 year. And I don't think she needed to be in jail. She found I don't know the whole case because I was thrown in court to help her because the other ADA advocate was kicked out of the court, which was illegal too. But she found a journal of her, I think, 13-year-old. There was 13 and 11 and 9-year-old girls. What the father, how he was molesting the children. And when she talked about it, she was the one that was at fault. And I spent 1 day in a trial with her. It was an inquisition trial. It was just pounding on her. She had a panic attack. The judge gave her 5 minutes to get out of the panic attack, like she could, right? So we did some, you know, therapeutic intervention. There was also a psychiatrist waiting outside. And she ended up that evening going to the hospital because of another panic attack. The next morning, she was still in the hospital. I went to court to tell the judge that I was going to go get my client. She was in the hospital. And the judge continued the trial, and she lost her parental rights while she was in the hospital and spent 1 year in jail. And the judge, you know, I had the document that she had precancerous things on her skin that she needed therapy. The judge decided she did not have cancer. I had the paper saying that she had PTSD. She needed an advocate. The judge decided she did not have PTSD. So I went to the ADA coordinator at the court, said she couldn't do anything. I went to the state coordinator who told me, well, it's a judge's court. She can do what she wants. And then I went to the DOJ because ADA advocates are supposed to be protected by the Department of Justice. I never heard from them.
Wow. Yep, that's the system that I've come to see so much of. And it just seems that I swear, if you go into a bad situation, it never gets better, you know, unless, you know, he's been lucky. He's got a new judge now in his situation that has realized who the bad guy really is. And so they're more apt this is in some of my training is that we learn that it takes 2 years sometimes for a judge to realize who the bad guy really is, because the narcissistic person can come to court and they speak the court language. They are cold.
Exactly, yeah. And they can speak while the protective parent is just shaking and crying because he or she knows the children are being abused and molested and raped and sold. And then the other is cool.
Right, right. And I see that often. That's what I work with my clients on, is to just, gray rock it. You become a gray rock, don't respond to anything. Let them look like the rotten person that they really are. And then the judge starts seeing, and the judge in his case has started to see who the bad person was.
Well, and it helped to have a good lawyer at this time. Tina recommended a different lawyer, so I went with the new lawyer, so he could call out what's going on. And so that got me a lot of
It's helped.
legal stuff.
It's helped.
It started going my way when that happened. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And I
So
think one of the
how
big problem is in family court is you have the fathers' rights movement that turn against the women. You have the women that turn against the guys. Why don't we all get together, turn against the court? Because a court is the problem.
Yes, and I agree with you on that. And Carl Roberts, who I want to introduce you to, he is definitely in that direction, wanting to transform the courts and get these people trained to understand what's really going on. So as we start to wind things down, so how can people get a hold of you, Danielle, if they're wanting you to help them through their stuff?
Well, they can go on my website, daniellejcoaching.com. And I just added a page called Phoenix. And that's about my court situation and helping people who go through a lot of trauma. And, I offer 20, 30 minutes of free coaching. It's confidential. I can help people maybe, find a way to get better, to at least keep their head above water, because there is an end to that tunnel. It's not always a train coming back at you. And there is hope for the future.
Awesome, awesome. I work with Canadians, and so I have a lady who does a program once or twice a year on post-separation abuse that I want to get you in touch with Charlotte as well, partly because you guys speak French, and so that might be a place that you can help other
They have
people
a funny
out too.
French there, though.
I wouldn't know.
We understand each other.
That's good. There's a difference in Spanish too, from Mexico Spanish to Spain Spanish. So
Yeah.
I've been in that position in Germany where I have had to translate a Spain Spanish that's different. So I get it. So I am a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in divorce and the divorce complexities. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially when you're divorcing a toxic narcissistic partner. Joe has experienced that type of abuse, and he's also here to help answer, just talk to people. And so we can both be contacted through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me and Joe on social media, specifically Facebook. I'm under Tina Lynn Huggins. He's under Joseph Huggins. And then I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn as well, and Alignable, that you can find me on. And the last name is spelled Huggins. So if you're wanting to contact either of us, you can contact us there. And please like, comment, and share this post so that we can help as many people as we can. Thank you very much, Danielle. Is there any last minute advice that you want to give?
I would just say never give up. Never,
Amen.
never give up. There is always going to be a solution. It may take some time, but recovery is possible.
Yes, definitely. Do you have any last minute advice?
I love what she said, is don't give up. So, and there's times where you feel like giving up, but don't do that. There's good things ahead. So
and it's good to have a support group and to have different people, because you cannot put all your burdens on one person. You can tell one person about this, one person about that, but don't just put the whole thing on one person.
Great advice, because and yeah, so I had a family, I'll just say a family group. They felt like family. It was a group of men that we met and prayed, and they helped me so much. Everybody could tell their own story, and they were so supportive. So reach out to whatever group feels right for you is what I'd recommend.
Yes, and that's my recommendation is you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need help. So reach out, get the help you need, and just stay on top of it. And support group is a great group because you get to hear other people with the same thing, and they can give you advice as to what has worked for them. So, and again, thank you, Danielle, so much for sharing your story, and I hope to have you back so that we can continue this conversation and reach more people that need your service.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.